Okay, let's see. This should be live. Oh, it's working. Great. Okay, so it looks like we are back. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned in earlier and then for some reason the stream didn't work, but it looks like we are live now. So thank you again to everyone who is joining us for our second Vercel Community stream. I'm Pauline. I work as part of the community team here at Vercel. If you are wanting to join in and chat to us, feel free to jump into the community chat. If you can't see the chat for whatever reason, you need to click the going button on the post, and the chat should appear for you. If if you want to engage with us and things, please let us know where you're tuning in from. So before we officially begin, I'd like to remind everyone to please adhere to our community code of conduct throughout this session. Your participation and generally engagement is what makes these streams super valuable. So let's make sure we create a positive and respectful environment for all. And let me just share the community code of conduct here in the chat so you can all review that as well. We've already got David in the chat who has said, I hope you didn't experience a common attack. That's really funny. Thank you for cracking up that joke because we were kind of stressed getting the stream up. All right, so let's dive into this topic for today. I'm so super excited to introduce Malavika, one of our product managers here at Vercel, and she'll be leading this session today. I will add her on now. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Pauline, for the introduction. I'm so excited to be here. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. I'm really excited to share more about the Vercel firewall and give you a little bit more information about how you can use it to protect yourself against just really common web application attacks.
Amazing. Well, over to you, and I'll be backstage.
Awesome. So once again, thanks everyone for being here. And before we actually go into kind of common web application attacks and how you can use the Vercel firewall, I thought it'd be useful actually to give a little bit of background context as to why we've been working on a firewall to begin with. I think at Vercel, we envision a web that's secure by default. I was actually telling Pauline earlier, we want to give you everything you need for the front end. We want to make it super easy for you to build really amazing front-end web experiences. And we're a comprehensive solution for the front end. And it's kind of like, your front end is the front door to your application. And I was telling Pauline, one of the challenges I think is, imagine redoing your house and you put up this beautiful new door, and then your door didn't come with some deadbolts and locks. And so instead you've wrapped around these ugly chains and added all these kind of aggressive security measures in front of it, which is kind of, I think, what a lot of people had done historically, whether that's putting reverse proxies in front and adding all kinds of, security components, captchas, whatever in your application to stop attack traffic. And I think, we want to be able to give you really the ability to make great web applications and that are secure. And I think on the flip side too, in addition to just the fact that security is such a critical part of the front end, I think when you put a web application out today, within minutes of deploying a website, it immediately starts getting crawled by suspicious traffic. Just there's so many internet kind of crawlers just scanning the entire public internet, trying to find vulnerabilities to exploit. And we actually see so much of that on Vercel, people looking for just WordPress sites that they can possibly compromise to host malware, or potential kind of vulnerabilities that someone can use to exploit. Again, either to kind of abuse some sort of steal compute, or somehow do some sort of nefarious activity. And so I think today, when you put a web application out, you've got to think about security from the get-go. And so those are really the reasons today that we want to really support security by default in your web applications. So that's a little bit of background context on why. And the history of the Vercel firewall, it's not actually something that's new. When you're building cloud infrastructure, we've had DDoS protection since the very early days. We've had to protect Vercel's infrastructure. And so that existed actually for a very long time. But in May 2023, it's kind of when we officially announced to customers, hey, we give you DDoS protection out of the box, and really make that very explicit. And then last year in May, we had launched the web application firewall. And here this gave customers the ability to really author their own WAF rules. So that's all at layer 7 of the kind of OSI model. You can write layer 7 rules. And we've also issued provided a managed rule set based on the OWASP top 10 kind of core rule set. We made our own implementation of the sort of popular ModSec rule set. And then we launched attack challenge mode, which allows you to effectively issue a JavaScript challenge. And we'll talk a little bit more about all of those things later in the presentation. So that was kind of, I would say last year in May, that's really when we launched, I would say, like core web application firewall features. And then in October we've continued to ship lots of great things in the firewall. But I think in October, we sort of had another kind of big milestone with rate limiting going GA. And I think, but at that point, I feel like we have a really great kind of fully featured web application firewall. And that really starts to kind of compete head to head with a lot of the, I think, competitors in the market offering WAFs. And, as we look forward, I think we don't want to just offer you the same protection. We want to leapfrog them and really make, application security great. And I'm really excited about some of the things we're working on this quarter. We're really improving the UX. I think you've got a lot of functionality today in the firewall, but we want to make it just much more delightful and easy to use. We'll also be kind of working quite a lot on making, bot mitigation easier for all our customers. So those are some of the things we're working on. And with that, I'll talk about actually probably one of the most common web threats, which is DDoS attacks. And so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with a distributed denial of service attack. So a denial of service attack is like if you've got a web application, if you think back to kind of the early days of web applications, you probably had like a server somewhere with a fixed amount of network capacity. And if you got too many requests, it would overwhelm the server and it would fall over. And people, they're threat actors who want to take down your site. Maybe they just want to take down your site because they don't like what you're saying, which is often the case with people who are supporting kind of journalism and free speech in areas where there's a lot of censorship, or maybe they just want to take your site down. You're like a major e-commerce company and they know that they can ransomware you because if you're, I don't know, Best Buy, you can't afford to have your site down on Black Friday. And so those are some of the reasons someone might try to launch a DDoS attack against you. Or a denial of service attack against you. And so the idea is that they'd send a bunch of traffic to overwhelm your application, and it would fall over. And today, I think just given kind of network capacity, if you want to actually execute a denial of service attack, you're probably going to have to leverage a lot of devices on the internet so you can send millions of requests, probably not just hundreds of requests. It's very difficult to like overwhelm the system with humans actually sending what looks like possibly legitimate web traffic. And so what usually happens is there's some sort of malware that's taken over a bunch of devices and created sort of a network of bots, which you call a botnet. And they would launch an attack against a specific application. And sometimes, I would say that like there's just a lot of malicious activity. I think there are times when there's very concentrated attacks against individuals, and then a lot of times we see a lot of these kind of compromised devices doing just nefarious activities more broadly, and kind of just crawling the internet as well. But anyway, that's sort of the background on DDoS attacks. Now, a little bit about, I think, the implications for Vercel. I think, beyond just sort of the traditional risks of denial of service, because Vercel is elastically scalable, you probably, if you did experience an attack, your application would actually probably not go down. I mean, we can handle very, very, very high loads. And so I think that actually what the implications of DDoS attacks are for people who have applications on Vercel is that you actually would then just see a huge spike in traffic. And because, either you have kind of usage-based billing or a certain amount of usage in your tier, if someone experiences a DDoS attack, what actually ends up happening is they see a huge spike in usage. And so that kind of actually is sort of an evolution of what a DDoS attack is. But it's not just about kind of denying actual like availability of your application, but actually kind of, I think it's gone now into this kind of realm of sort of wreaking financial havoc and just causing, you've just got a lot of traffic now to your site that you really don't want. And it's far more than you really should be paying. You don't want to be paying for like thousands of dollars possibly for legitimate, illegitimate traffic rather. And because of that, I think the risks of that, we want to make sure that anyone who has an application on Vercel can be rest assured that this won't happen to them. That if someone tries to attack their site, or if there's just like a lot of low quality traffic hitting their application, that will block that automatically. And so I'll actually kind of transition to the firewall now, so we can look at the product. So I'll just say that the DDoS protections are enabled by default for everyone. And we've made the DDoS protections such that they are the kind of mitigations that anybody running an application would largely want to have. And so they're not kind of very focused rules around someone's specific business logic. We've made assumptions that for the most part around what people have on Vercel are going to be probably web applications that you access through the browser, and that so generally automated traffic you wouldn't want, and some of these like very large spikes, concentrated spikes in traffic, we would be dropping. And then we also look at a lot of, I think, patterns across our entire network at Vercel, and when we see sort of malicious fingerprints, we'll block that as well. And monitor some of the behavior. We see a lot of path enumeration and kind of suspicious kind of crawling, and so that's something as well we block at the platform level. But you can always bypass it. But going into kind of where you can find out more information about the firewall. So here on the project page, you can see we've got your DDoS protection enabled, and if your firewall is active. Or you can go straight to the firewall tab and see all the stats. Oh, what's going on? Let's see. Oh, here we go. I have to report that, though something funny is going on with the past hour of data, but it might have actually been there was just no traffic, and we stopped this is like a test site, and we had generated some fake attack traffic on it. But cool. So here you can see the firewall tab, and you can see all the traffic that has come to our site, as well as traffic that we've blocked. And you can see here, actually, some of this has been blocked by basic WAF rules, as well as traffic that we've challenged by attack challenge mode, as well as other WAF rules. And so you can see all of your kind of summary of statistics here on the firewall. And there's really nothing you need to do to enable DDoS protection. It works by default. Now, one of the things I do want to just show, because I think it's a question we often get asked, because sometimes people do have, there's legitimate automated traffic that you're running. Maybe you've got automated tests running against the firewall that you want to bypass. And so there are ways, if you do need to ensure that specific traffic that we see getting blocked by the firewall because it's tripping off some of the kind of platform mitigations, you can definitely bypass those protections by adding kind of a system bypass rule, and that you can do in the configure section of the firewall. And in case of a super emergency, if you ever have it, and we've had incidents ourselves from our own cloud providers. So we fully know, if you ever have an incident where, the traffic is getting blocked and it's like possibly causing an outage, you can just disable system mitigations altogether if needed. And so, awesome. With that, that's a little bit about our DDoS protections. And so kind of going on that, I think, I had mentioned about DDoS. I want to be conscious of time. We actually don't have that much time. But one of the, and I want to leave some time for questions. But, I think earlier we talked a little bit about how so much of attack traffic today that we see is generated by bots. And so actually going back to the firewall, I want to just talk about attack challenge mode a little bit too. So one of the ways you can stop automated traffic on the internet is to issue a JavaScript challenge. A JavaScript challenge is effectively a challenge that's provided to, the device that's accessing your website. And if it's a browser, it should be able to easily solve the challenge. It pretty much is a test of whether or not the device is a browser. There are very sophisticated bots that I think today can bypass some of these JavaScript challenges. But for the most part, it's, I think, a pretty effective way at distinguishing between, are you a human or are you not? And so if you're ever seeing a huge spike in traffic, and again, a huge spike in traffic is probably going to be caused by automated traffic. A very effective way to stop it is just enabling attack challenge mode. And so if you click this button, again, it'll issue a JavaScript challenge to every visitor that visits your site, as long as it's enabled. So we can enable that. And then from now on, actually, let me see if I go visit this site. Oops. Let's share this. Oh no, I think I didn't quite share it in time before the JavaScript challenge had been solved. But let me see if I can refresh it. No, my device is over. Anyway, unfortunately, we've missed the JavaScript challenge, I think, because it's quite short. But disable this. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I stopped sharing. Oh, today's not our day, is it, Pauline, for IT issues? But anyway, and so going kind of back to where I was, that's how you use attack challenge mode. And so I'll talk about one more way to stop bad bots on the internet, and actually that's about rate limiting. And then I'll hand it over to questions, since we do only have 7 minutes left today. But I think one of the other things we see a lot with bots on the internet is I think there's certain parts of your application that are going to be more sensitive, especially like login pages. And if you've got a page where you're putting payment credentials, there's a lot of times we'll see a lot of brute force attacks, particularly with login pages. For example, someone might have have a list of a bunch of stolen credentials, and they might just be kind of going through all those stolen credentials in an automated fashion on a login page. And so a really effective way to just stop against that type of malicious traffic is to create a rate limiting rule. And so we've got like within the rule builder of the firewall, it's super easy. You can just create what's a rate limiting type rule. This is only available to pro and enterprise customers, but anyone on those plans can easily create a rate limiting rule, and then specify this possibly on a specific path. And then you can select what kind of counting algorithm, whether that's requests over a fixed window, or a token bucket, which is this idea of you have a certain number of tokens over a time scale, and the kind of bucket fills up over time, and you take tokens out as the user kind of goes and visits. And you can specify what time frame, the number of requests, as well as select what kinds of counting keys you might want to use. So I would recommend using an IP address for the most part, but you can always pair an IP address with either a JAFWord signature or a user agent. And then you can decide, what kind of action you'd want to issue for that rate limit, whether that's just kind of a 429 error, or maybe you want to just deny it outright. or possibly challenge that traffic once it hits that threshold. The one last thing I'll kind of say before we go into questions. Again, I know we have ran into some technical difficulties, so we have quite a short presentation today. I think another kind of really effective way to leverage the firewall is really to actually create very simple rules that I think are aligned to just traffic that you don't want. And what I mean by that is, like, if you are a business in the United States, you probably don't want you don't want traffic from sanctioned countries. Like, most likely the traffic coming from countries like Iran it's probably not legitimate traffic for your web application. Again, depends on what you're doing. And so maybe you want to block that traffic. And so I think it's really easy to just sort of create rules where you can just specify, if the country is, and then say Iran, or a subset of countries on the OFAC list, just let's block that traffic and not let that through. And actually, and similarly, there's certain behaviors on certain paths that you might want to challenge or rate limit. Whatever is kind of suspicious for your application. I think it's always worth kind of thinking through just sort of really straightforward business logic around, like, what kinds of traffic would you not want on your site, and what can I just sort of either kind of outright block or challenge? Because more often than not, actually, a lot of times a lot of suspicious traffic does originate from sources that you would not expect to see. And this is just kind of a good, I think, security best practice of just adding a few extra, I guess, locks on your door so that your application is secure. So with that, I know we only have 3 minutes left. We can go into questions. I'll stop sharing.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that presentation. I know we've only got like a couple of minutes left before we have to jump off. Thank you again to everyone that's tuned in. I know that was kind of a little bit all over the place, but one question that I feel like we get a lot in the community, so I'm going to ask it to you, Malavika, which is, how can I ensure my firewall settings do not block legitimate traffic or essential application functions?
Yeah, I mean, so this is actually what we went over already. Sorry, but I think the system bypass, and I'll just show it again because it is something that people run into frequently, frequently enough. Oh, sorry. So let me just present my screen again. So as I had mentioned, you can either create on the configure page. I would create a system bypass. I would say this is generally the better way to do it. You can, specify a specific IP range for a specific host. So you're not just like letting all traffic through, that it's like quite targeted, because usually it is quite targeted. And just to note, the custom rules that are of bypass type, those are WAF bypass rules. So they'll work to bypass kind of any subsequent WAF rules that have, and no other WAF rules would be evaluated if you have a WAF bypass rule, and also OWASP protection would be bypassed. But the system DDoS mitigations don't get bypassed by if you create like a bypass rule here. And so that's one way. And then the other way is if you click these 3 dots, you can also disable system mitigations.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I guess one final question to close off our session today is there anything you can share that's coming up in the firewall that our community can be super excited about and look forward to? I don't know if there's anything that you can share.
Yeah, I mean, we're making, I actually don't have the screenshots to share, but we've been working really hard on improving the user experience. Some of our colleagues in design and front end are so talented, and I'm really excited. Over the next few weeks, we're going to give it a glow up, the firewall tab, and the observability is going to get a lot better. So I would say stay tuned, and those are some exciting updates there. And for those interested in bot mitigation, I'd say over the next few months, we're going to have some exciting updates there. So I'd stay tuned to that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Malavika. It was great to have you join us today. And thank you everyone for tuning in and being patient with us. And hopefully we can see you again next week. We have a V0 community-led session, so please tune in for that. And yeah, if you have any more feedback or questions on the session, you know where to find us in the community. And yeah, we'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.